Y'all know we are picky about our sponsors, and this one was handpicked by us because we absolutely love it. April and I are huge fans of Hot Source Yoga. Not only does their hot Pilates and hot sculpt keep us fit and feeling good, but we also have a ton of fun doing it. If you are in or around Santa Cruz, you gotta check out Hot Source Yoga. And if you want to be extra badass and up your Pilates game, or perhaps become a Pilates teacher, dive into their online Hot Pilates teacher training anytime from the privacy of your own home. The founder, Nicole, is also one of my favorite life coaches who has helped hundreds of women empower themselves to make their dreams a reality. Nicole offers sessions in person or online. Use code SHAMELESS for $20 off your first coaching session at NicoleDuke.com, and be sure to visit HotSourceYogaStudio.com to see why it's our latest obsession. I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and co-owner of PurePleasureShop.com.
I'm April, VP of the cutting-edge sex toy company Hot Octopus, and I dedicate my life to the business of sex.
We are on a mission to teach you how to have hot sex, deep intimacy, and how to make your own rules for who you are as a sexual being.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Revolution.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
You are listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to the Shameless Sex Podcast during
Quarantine
time.
We're on what they call shelter in place in Santa Cruz County and most of the Bay Area.
We are only supposed to leave our homes when it's absolutely necessary. So like grocery store, hospital, gasoline. But
right.
I guess we don't need a lot of gas since we're not supposed to drive a lot
There
of
were
places.
surprisingly more cars on the road than I thought when I came to your house to record. However, I will say it was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, and
which is usually when there's a lot of traffic on the road. Actually.
It's typically packed. It's a parking lot, and it was surprisingly. It took me 6 minutes to get over here, and
that was great.
It's such a weird time, though, in the world.
Yeah,
we've never seen anything like this.
This is well, not in our lifetime for sure.
I don't think our grandparents have seen anything like this.
Yeah, they had World War II.
Right, the Great Depression.
But different kind of experience. At least our grandparents, they had different kind of experience, but also still like scary, hard times for sure. But here, this is interesting. It's really interesting, and the podcast world is an interesting place to be in during this time. I would imagine there's more of you listening right now because you have a lot more time on your hands, and you can only watch so many Netflix shows and read so many books, or
I had to buy special eye drops to help. They're called Digi-Eye because my eyes were getting strained from not only working on my laptop, looking at my phone, and then watching whatever was on TV at the same time, which I try not to watch that much TV. It helps, these eye drops, by the way, because I feel like I'm surrounded by my screens more than I ever have been lately.
You have Digi-Eye syndrome?
I have Digi-Eye, strained eyes, and I cut my trip to Australia short by a few days.
Early. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
It was chill. It was definitely relaxed vibe over there about the COVID-19. And then every time I spoke to someone from home, people were checking in and saying, when are you coming home? You need to get back.
Yeah, the word would get stuck.
You were the only one that hadn't.
I thought that.
I know, but you did not call me and say that. I
didn't want to freak you out.
Right. But I was getting calls from everybody on a regular basis that had known I was going. And then I was posting things on Instagram like, well, the only Corona I'm drinking is
in
my hand, I guess.
She looks like it's chill. I don't want to worry you over there because there's not much you can do.
They also, in Australia, they get things after everyone else, not viral wise. I'm saying in general, things
information.
Yes, it just happens. It's a delay. They're ahead of where we are Pacific time zone wise. They're 19 hours ahead.
Yeah.
It was just they were less panicked.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to watch things shifting here. So previously, before this podcast started, you heard us talking about one of our beloved sponsors, Hot Source Yoga. And currently, Hot Source Yoga just decided yesterday that they're not doing classes.
And
they can't.
You go all the time. You were like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Like, what am I going to do? I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with hot Pilates and hot yoga. And so but not only did they have to they decided for themselves, but also they're just not allowed to. Like you
can't congregate in more than 10 people right now.
But they
and
are
it's St.
starting
Patrick's
to do,
Day.
Yeah, St. Patrick's Day today. We're drinking our red wine. Margins has new wine out, so we're drinking the new bottle.
Lovely.
Of red.
I've never had this varietal
really
in
good.
my life. I don't even remember how to pronounce it, but I'll look and then tell everyone about that too.
Yeah, we'll share that with you.
It's time to drink wine and have sex and practice some of the things that we've talked about. Meditation.
Yep.
My one of my closest friends in the world, who is an interior designer, who you know, Amy, she was asking me today, they want her to do a podcast because everyone's indoors right now, and her company's asking about healthy practices. And she was asking me about what I would offer or say. And I said, meditation is the one thing that can keep you mentally well.
Yeah.
Because our health right now, yes, is our physical health it can be in question if you have to be in the elements, but our mental health, when you're trapped inside, whether it's a nice sunny day or you're on an island somewhere beautiful or you're in the Midwest or New York City and you're on lockdown, our mental health is really something that is important. And meditation's huge, and physical exercise. You have to exercise your body in whatever way possible.
How about orgasms, though, everyone? This is a great time to start doing your own self-pleasure practice.
I like that, yes.
Just, doing more self-pleasure. And in fact, if you don't have sex toys, this is a great time to get sex toys and to start doing some more fun, playful things. That's what happens to a lot of people. They don't have time.
Pure pleasure is delivering.
Pure pleasure is still delivering. We don't directly go to your house. We won't be knocking your door, but we will put it in a package for you. It's a store that I co-own with my mom, and all of our listeners get 15% off with coupon code SHAMELESSSEX at purepleasureshop.com. So go start doing more self-pleasure, then more celebration of you. You have more time. You cannot claim you don't have more time right now.
Now's the time to also try anal if you've never tried it. Get a butt plug. Put it in, a small little butt plug. Pure pleasure as a whole.
Booty plug.
The booty plug, the smallest booty plug.
Is it BOOTIE or what?
Like pirate's booty.
Ooh, pirate's booty. Yeah, they have small, medium, large. I like the medium. I'm a medium girl.
It's like $35 and you get 15% off.
Yep, it's great.
Check that out.
It's a great starting toy. And
you're saving money on restaurants right now.
I know, because you can't go out and eat. I guess you can get takeout some places. And and I don't know if this is, this isn't necessarily countrywide, but I don't know if it's not in a town near you. It might be soon. So start being prepared in all the ways that you can. But don't forget about toilet paper.
The good news is, I think Amy and I, to contribute and hope that you know how much we love you, and because we have and cannot go anywhere, we have to be inside. We're going to come out with some
more podcasts
for you.
Yeah.
It's time to get creative and lots of good stuff. We're going to not only brainstorm. I mean, I have some great ideas. I know Amy always has great ideas about the podcast. So we're going to come out with some really amazing content for you. So stay tuned. Stay listening. But first, we have some testimonials.
Yeah. So on the note of what's happening with the old coronavirus, so we had a Patreon. We still have a Patreon account that we're not really big on advocating for, just because we do the advertising instead. That supports us and keeps this podcast free for you all. And if you want to give us money in Patreon, that's cool. It buys us wine and other things. Unless Margins Wine gives us.
I would prefer
wine,
people
we love it.
donating money to poor, needy people
Give
right now.
money to the poor, needy people, or you can buy things from our advertisers, and that helps us support us directly as well. But today I actually gave $100 to a woman that I saw that posted a Facebook post about how she only has $100 in her bank account.
I'm donating to Doctors Without Borders. I have been now for some time, and I may also, with my next paycheck when that comes, give to some people in need that are going to be affected by this.
I mean, I think if people are feel comfortable and stable or are well off, then right now is a really great time to help at least someone out. Go out there and help someone.
Absolutely.
So this person on Patreon, they have been donating. They did the highest tier, which was a $20 tier. It's since day one, and now they're not doing it. But they're not doing it for a great reason. It's because times are really scary for them, and they have to reconsider. And so I just want to share what they had to say. They said, "You two have changed my life for the better for the last 2.5 years. I chose the highest level to support for as long as I could for that reason. My employment situation has changed, and I must focus on taking care of my family and prepping for a potentially catastrophic year. Much love to you all and all that you've done for me and all those inside my zone of impact. In a very, very real way, because of you two, I have the mental, physical, and geographical space to save lives during this global emergency. Thank you forever. Please visit Amherst Island if you are up in Canada Way again, between Toronto and Montreal."
Oh, that's a fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic testimonial, and
we totally get it, and we're so happy that you're.
Yes, absolutely. And as we just said, even before you read the testimonial, Amy, it's a very strange time, and of course, people are indoors. Sex is going to be essential. Yeah. And hopefully this podcast will help you just feel great about your sexuality and the silver linings. The silver linings. And I had sex this morning and I told you what happened.
Oh, wait, what happened this morning?
With my partner.
We were
having sex. We hadn't connected in a long time. And he had basal cell on his nose. So he had it.
Cancerous.
Yes, it's cancer cells. And he had it's a minimal surgery, but they do cut you open. Anyway, that's not the sexy part. We were having some steamy, wonderful sex. And he's got it looks like he had a rhinoplasty because he has a big old bandage on his nose. And his eye looks like he got punched because it's black and blue. I sent you a picture. Yeah. Anyway, we're having sex. I'm on top for the reasons of blood flow because the eye should not get a bunch more blood flowing to it. And all of a sudden, right before, I could tell he was going to come and I was right there too. I was yes.
All the blood in his face and genitals.
It started running down his cheek and I was like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah. I was like, no, you're bleeding. He's like, what? I was like, I jumped off. I was like, you're bleeding. I can't. Oh my God. I feel like I'm hurting you. So that story was great, but then it was an even funnier story that because neither of us were able to orgasm because I was like, I can't. I need you to heal first. So I might just do me right now. You want to watch?
Yeah, orgasm might not be a smart choice for him right now.
Yeah, I think we're going to take a break for that.
It's too much blood flow in the face and genitals with that arousal, and that's might be dangerous.
He was all, what? It was funny after I knew that he wasn't hurt. It was just, I think, too much blood flow.
Then you kind of laugh about it.
Yeah, so it's funny now. And the fact is, he does look like he got the shit beat out of him, too.
Those kind of moments, you just have to laugh.
It's like Armageddon, and he looks like he got into a fight.
Yeah. So, aww. Well, someone thinks that's really sexy. Maybe you do. Maybe you do.
I don't mind. It's like Fight Club style.
I think that's good that you had humor about it, though. That's kind of an important thing when those moments, instead of oh my God, I can't believe that happened. It ruined our orgasm. So the world is falling apart.
And the world, no matter what's going on outside of your house, you really can control what's going on inside, and you can still have pleasure and sex and pleasure with yourself, pleasure with others. Hey, the internet's still rolling. My girlfriend.
Yeah, internet's still rolling. Yeah, you can still get all the online things. All the online app businesses are doing well. You want to read another testimonial?
Oh, yes.
For our listeners. This is something that someone wrote in to us.
Thank you for writing testimonials, by the way. We love reading all your just feedback and positivity in this dark time.
Yes.
So, here we go. I loved your episode on the effects of BC. Recently, I stopped taking my hormonal birth control pills after being on some sort of hormonal BC for over a decade. Previously, when I was on it, I had zero libido. It hadn't even occurred to me that the pills could do this, and I mostly attributed it to being a pastor's daughter who made sex something to be ashamed of, and past sexual assaults I have had PTSD from. After my body started clearing out the meds, my brain and libido woke up. Thank you so much to you both and all the incredible educators you feature. It gives women like me a chance at restarting, rewiring, and rethinking what sex really is. You have inspired me, and I'm feeling happy and sexy for the first time since I was a young teen, and I can't even express how grateful I am for strong and brave women like you.
Oh, so sweet.
Well, you're a strong and brave human, too, and congrats on getting off that birth control. I don't think birth control is not evil or anything. If you haven't listened to any of those episodes, we just talk about some of the effects with experts in the field about what those things can do to your body, your brain, and how you can change that. And there's other modes of contraception out there.
Or at least having awareness so that you don't feel like there's something wrong with you because your libido has flatlined.
I was one of those humans.
Yeah.
For a while. I mean, I've always been a sexual human. Since Barry when I was 5.
Barry, the bear that you
said out my bear.
Have sex with.
And it did sort of put a decompression, like a little veil of fog over my sexuality for many years, from 15 until I was about, when did I get off birth control? 32?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a long time, huh?
It's a long run with birth control for sure.
Yeah. And I tried all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
Like the ring.
I got you to try the non-hormonal IUD, and you're like, I hate this thing.
I'm like, it feels like someone's murdering me from the inside out.
You're like the 8th person that I recommended to that said that. I was like, I'm going to stop recommending this to people. And then I got pregnant on it, so I really stopped.
It was helpful because I lived in Israel at the time, so it was helpful because I couldn't get birth control while I was there.
Yeah.
I had like one of my friends buy it, and I would like pay her on the side after. Yeah.
black market style.
It was black market birth control.
All right, you ready to do a sex question?
Yes.
Let's dive into a sex question.
All right. So this sex question is obviously from someone anonymous. I'm 24 and still a virgin, and honestly haven't really dated anyone either. Not that I'm not attracted to women or have a low sex drive, but there are a lot of times when I don't find people that interesting and don't really want to talk with them after meeting them. There's also a lack of confidence within myself. I'm not a big fan of dating apps, but when I do try, I find myself not getting a lot of responses, which is a confidence killer. And I'm quite self-conscious about my size down there, slightly below average in parentheses. I'm able to talk to people and make friendly conversation, but fall through after that. I feel like I've put myself in a box that I can't get out of. There's this inner extrovert that tries to make the effort and go for it, but a lack of experience and abundance of insecurities that push me back.
One thing that came to mind when I read that, and we've received a lot of interesting feedback. We've had people that have, I'm thinking of Trip Kramer's episode that we did on how to talk to
Controversial
girls.
episode for us.
Yeah, it was controversial. Some people thought that we were shaming. Some people thought that he spoke in too many absolutes and generalizations about the way sexuality is for men and women, and he was very heteronormative, right? But he did have this really easy to navigate blueprint for folks like this who are not confident in talking to women.
Penis owning folks.
Yeah, penis owning folks who are not confident in talking to women, who are like, I'm scared, I'm terrified, I'm not confident. And because this is a common thing, especially when people are inexperienced. And, we all know that experience is what helps us find confidence. We're like, if we don't, especially if we've gone so long without having the experience, there's nothing wrong with being a 24-year-old virgin, by the way.
Sorry, and I hope I'm not interrupting you. What came up for me when I was reading this, first of all, the dating app portion. So if this is something, obviously, that is easy for you from time to time to tap into, perhaps what would be helpful is to have someone that you trust that maybe they have some experience with the dating apps. I've helped other friends with this.
Yeah.
Spruce up their profiles a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe open up the folks that you're interested in. Because I think you can kind of box out different age groups or whatever, different areas. I don't exactly know. That might help you boost your profile and maybe attract some different people that you normally haven't been able to access before because of your filters or because your profile wasn't juicy enough. And that's easy to do. You can do that.
And what people do when they make their own profiles is oftentimes they're not sharing all of themselves, and there's kind of limiting to what they put on there. You have someone else, and also I would say have someone else who
write it for you.
Yeah, or like, if you're geared towards women, have a woman look at it and be like, and don't put photos of you in sunglasses. Don't put photos of you taking beer bongs. Don't put photos of you with a whole bunch of other women on there, and then also make sure that you have some words that share more about who you are, and you can I've written profiles too for people. I've had people that have like, now they're engaged to the person for them because they would never have written what I wrote for them because they're like, I don't know how to say that stuff about myself, and it was still authentic and genuine. And I will say, not all dating apps are created equal. I like what you're saying, April, and also diversify the different dating apps that you try.
Yes.
I have a guy friend that was like striking out on Bumble and Tinder, and it was just like, this guy, was really bumming him out. He's like, no one's interested in me on there. And then he tried Hinge, and all of a sudden he had a couple dates. So definitely, and there's also Coffee Meets Bagel,
Plenty of Fish. There's so many different options these days, especially, and there's more popping up all the time. I know some of them cost money, so if that's a challenge, perhaps you could just test different ones out for a month and then switch it off, or I think just not putting your eggs in one basket when it comes to the dating app situation. Yeah. And of course, having someone else write it is more helpful because selling yourself is difficult, even if you are a confident person.
Yeah.
You have to kind of give your attributes, and I'm terrible at it too.
Yeah.
I've had you help me write things about myself before.
It's hard for most people to write things about themselves. Yeah.
Like, I'm a 38-year-old, I could give you the facts, 38-year-old
Boss
cancer.
queen sex toy.
Yeah, I was born in July from Wisconsin.
And then I'd read it and be like, I'm fucking awesome. But I wouldn't say it in a way that sounded cocky. If you don't have someone that can look at your dating profile, you can hire April and I for an hour to do that for you.
We're quitting Shameless Sex podcasting. We're going to start writing app profiles.
We can do some dating app profile.
I am really good at it. You are too.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It would be totally fun. I'm serious. You can definitely
too.
hire us to do that for you.
Shit.
That's possible. And then also go listen to Trip Kramer's episode number 137 on our podcast. And what I will say about that as well is because he goes deep in this. I know this person's saying, I know how to go up and actually he's good at opener with this person can talk. It's the continued flirting, the continued conversations. That sounds like there's some fear and a psych out that happens. And Trip has a lot of really good information about that. And there's some generalizations in there, and to know that everyone is different. Like the way Trip speaks, it's kind of like all women like this. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. And he has some really good points to overcome some of the fear and how to find confidence and to continue on the conversations. And part of it, I think, is authenticity. Just, being you as well. But I know the you isn't feeling that confident. But, there's something to be said. For me, when I'm flirting with people, if I can tell that they're like spinning some game, not into it. And if people are nervous and they own it, I'm okay with that. Maybe not other people are, but I'm totally down. I love authenticity. I like humor too. Humor is really big for me, and playfulness. And for some people that can be hard to do, but it also can be really an easier way to communicate.
Another thing that the sex question asker, they brought up something about their genital size, which is always something that people, you don't ever know. It's a subjective thing, right? You don't know what size penis. And I think a lot of folks, especially heterosexual men, do assume that women, because they've heard them talk about, especially women that are into penises, they hear them.
They all want big.
They all want big, big, big. Yeah. I'm not one of those people. And look, if you are working with something that you think is really small, we've done episodes before, which I don't want to say really small. I'd say that you think is
below average.
Yeah. Great for anal.
Yeah. Oh, great for anal. Great for oral.
Great for oral.
Yeah.
There's so many different things that can be helpful to know, and you have a lot of other options than just penis and vagina.
And I remember what Susan Bratton said, that like, you have maybe a smaller penis, find someone with a smaller pussy, right? Like, all of our bodies are different shapes and sizes. And so what Susan Bratton says is like, it's not like there's one penis size for all pussies, right? She's like, I have a big pussy. My man's got a big penis. It's a good fit. But like, if I had a small pussy, his penis would be too big. So there's that.
This is going in your dating app profile.
Yeah.
Looking for that shallow vagina.
Yeah. I want that nice small vagina. And then the other thing that I was going to say about that is it's really not necessarily about size. It's about what you do with it. So keep educating yourself. Listen to our podcast episodes about how to pleasure a pussy with your mouth, with your fingers, with your penis. It's a lot more about presence and how you show up and skill and your desire to pleasure as opposed to the size of your cock.
Yeah.
Thank you for writing us, dear listener, and good luck out there, and go listen to Trip Kramer's episode number 137. And hopefully this helps.
All right. Let's get ready for Kara's bio. So Kara Loewentheil is a master certified coach with a BA from Yale and a JD from Harvard Law. In the last 3 years, after pivoting from a legal career, she has grown her life coaching business from 0 to 7 figures. She's the host of the iTunes top-rated self-help podcast, Unfuck Your Brain, which has been downloaded over 5 million times. And she has been featured in outlets like Marie Claire, Mind, Body Green, MSN.com, and The Huffington Post. Kara lives in New York City. To learn more, go to unfuckyourbrain.com. That's UNFCKYOURBRAIN.com. But first... This podcast was made possible by Manscaped. If you love the D just as much as we do, then it's time to trim up. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for you or your man's family jewels. We are huge fans of Manscaped's Perfect Package 3.0, which includes the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0, as well as their anti-chafing crop preserver and crop reviver. So when was the last time you shaved your pride and joy? Don't lie. If it's been a while, then it's time to give yourself the gift of some beautifully Manscaped balls that smell and feel oh so fresh. Hey, there's nothing worse than a mouthful of pubes.
Penis owners, it's time to step up your game. Penis admirers, you just discovered a great gift item for your lover. And our listeners get 20% off and free shipping with the code SHAMELESS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code SHAMELESS. Get pleasure the right way and use Manscaped. And now back to the show. All right, everyone, it is episode time, and I just learned the proper pronunciation of Kara's name, Kara Loewentheil. Did I do it?
Excellent. A+.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about anxiety and orgasms. And Kara, you do a lot of work specifically with women and a lot of about self-love, body image, anxiety, etc. Before we dive in, though, can you tell our listeners a little more? I know we already read the bio in the intro, but how you got to be where you are today and doing this work?
Yeah, it's a totally normal career path. I was about one step away from becoming a law professor, and then I was like, why do that when you could quit and become a life coach? So that's what I did. And I would say my Jewish parents have almost recovered. So I just had always I was always interested for myself in, I don't use the word seeker because I don't really feel like I was looking for an answer, but I've just always been very interested in like, how do we, what does it mean to live an intentional life? What is the good life? Like, why is the human experience the way it is? All that kind of, you look back at my high school yearbook, it's like the same shit I'm talking about now in my senior quotes. So I'd always been interested in that kind of work, but it was always just like my personal stuff. While I had this legal career, I was a women's rights lawyer, so reproductive rights lawyer, actually. So I've always been concerned with the vagina in some way or another. And then I was an academic, but when whether it was just like, I think for a lot of kind of accomplished people hit their 30s and they start to sort of be like, okay, I've done all the things I was supposed to do. I'm not sure this is the right thing for me. So it was maybe partly that. And also finding my teacher's coaching work just resonated with me in a way that nothing else really had before and really changed how I saw the world and myself. And so I decided to quit, not become a law professor and become a coach. I spent the first year coaching lawyers because I'd been a lawyer, but now I really work with women of people I either were socialized as women or currently identify as women of any profession or place or all over the world. Because I really focus specifically on like what happens to your thought process and your emotional life when you are socialized as a woman or when you identify as a woman or treated as a woman. So it's sort of like the effect that patriarchy has on your brain. Mm-hmm. That's really what I specialize in.
Okay. I love that. So on our podcast, we've been called out by a number of listeners here and there, maybe 2 or 3. We've received emails like when we talk about the patriarchy and they're like, you're man hating. And
I love men. I mean, I date men, but that doesn't mean that there aren't, social structures.
Yes. Yeah. And so reminder to everyone, we're talking about social structures. I think just when people hear patriarchy, they're like, you hate white men and you hate men in general. And we're talking about the social structures that is in reference to the patriarchy.
Patriarchy is bad for men too, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that people like miss. Like feminism isn't, I don't want men around. I definitely would like my boyfriend to stay around. Like I want men to stay around. Like, but patriarchy is bad for men also because it teaches them that things that come up in the sexual world all the time, right? That like teaches them that they like shouldn't, have their feelings. Like we say to little boys, like man up and like don't cry and be in charge. Patriarchy is terrible for everybody because it insists on these like incredibly kind of heteronormative opposite ends of the spectrum ways of defining gender. So as of course, but just for your listeners also, like I think feminists are some of the most masculine, positive people I know, right? Oh. We just want there to be a bigger range for men and women and people who are non-binary or identify as anything else to be able to express themselves the way they want and have equal rights.
Yeah, yeah, I like that point that the patriarchy also is limiting in that sense of men being able to feel safe to or be encouraged to express emotions, vulnerability, their softness, their sadness, and then also this idea that they're supposed to know everything. You know,
and like what they might be into sexually, right? I mean, under patriarchy, there's like only certain sex things that are okay and good, and some are gross and weird, and only certain people should like certain things. And we know that's not the way the human organism works. Lots of people are into lots of weird stuff all across any kind of spectrum.
Totally. And our motto is all consensual sex is good sex. So if whatever
and by weird, I don't mean weird is not a bad word, right? It's like the weird meaning like creative outside the mainstream of what we're taught is like lion missionary with a man and a woman, and you know.
Boring. Okay, anyways, no, sorry if you're into that, but if you're doing that every day for your whole life, I'm sure you crave more at times. So why do you think so many women have performance anxiety around orgasm? And I put in the word performance, maybe that's not how you define it, but why is there anxiety around orgasm? Why is it so common for women?
I think there's like a lot of different kinds of orgasm anxiety, right? It's like not even just one kind. So sometimes there's performance anxiety, and I think that can be from I think as the sexual culture has changed, right, one of the feminist critiques of modern sexual culture is that it's that it purports to be empowering in some way, right, that it isn't really. I mean, that's a sort of second wave, meaning like feminists from the 60s and 70s critique I don't necessarily totally subscribe to, but I do think like women now feel like, oh, okay, well, you know, if I want to be empowered and like modern and liberated, then I'm supposed to have an easy time orgasming and love having every kind of sex. And like, you know, I think women are pressured into having a lot of kinds of sex that they don't necessarily want or aren't totally comfortable with. And sometimes that pressure is external and sometimes it's internal. We kind of do it to ourselves. And so I think it can come from that, from thoughts of like what sex is supposed to be like. It can come from, in terms of like another version of performance anxiety, I think, you know, another way patriarchy is not great for men is I think even men who want to be very like pro consent and pro women's pleasure can end up getting socialized to hang their ego on their partner's satisfaction. So I've had clients where they're like, I always orgasm, but I just feel like I'm doing it. Like I have to do it for him to feel okay about himself. Like they're not necessarily even having a problem orgasming, but it doesn't feel like creative and play, you know, it doesn't feel like a sort of fully spontaneous, natural thing. It feels like, okay, I need to do this, or otherwise like my partner is not going to feel good about themselves. So there's that version. And then I think there's like a lot of different kinds of anxiety that can lead to people having trouble orgasming. And that can be, I feel like 100 million things, like thoughts about your body and how your body looks, right? Not feeling totally comfortable in the sexual situation, not feeling comfortable talking about what you like and telling someone what you like and how you want to be touched, not knowing how you like and want to be touched, right? If you've never kind of experimented that for yourself or had a partner who helped you figure it out. I think women also can get kind of fixated on like it's taking too long, right? Which also I think we assume that men, you know, I don't know that they're necessarily socialized exactly telling them to masturbate. We just assume that like teenage boys masturbate all the time and it's talked about and it's normal. And like, it's pretty rare to meet a man who's like, well, I don't know how to make myself orgasm. Like they pretty much know. Right. But I think that's not always true for people socialized and raised as women. There's still much more, I think, shame and secrecy around it. And so not like knowing is there a normal of how long it takes, how long that is, right? Having unrealistic expectations about like how quickly you should be able to orgasm or from what kind of stimulation. I think all of that, like it's such a mix. There could be a 1,000 different things that lead to it, but it is a lot of it comes from either lack of physical knowledge for yourself or your thoughts about what's going on. And that's really, I mean, you know, I recommend good sex educators to people. That's not my like specific niche, but the mental part of like the way, whatever your thoughts are during this encounter are going to impact your physical experience. That's really where I focus.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. I mean, that list could go on forever of all the things that can get in the way and cause someone to have anxiety around orgasm. And also, perform in a different way, fake orgasms, or withhold their pleasure or what it is that they are desiring and requesting. And I love Emily Nagoski's work. She wrote Come As You Are, about, you know, living in this penis-centric model for sexuality. And, you know, just because the penis is rock hard and ready to go, that the vulva should be. And, you know, and then and then, arousal can happen a lot easier and faster for penis owners, not all of them, but, it's a generalization.
Yeah.
And vulva owners can take longer, but there's this idea that take long part is a big thing for a lot of women that I know.
Yeah.
Like, he's ready to go and he's ready to have an orgasm in 5 minutes. What's wrong with me? I'm not that. I must be broken. And then one other thing that comes to mind for me too is for vulva owners having this internal anatomy, and, in puberty age, they can feel arousal and horniness, of course, but there's not this like, here's my cock that's all of a sudden is hard for no reason. I'm in the locker room and I'm 12 and I'm hard because the gym teacher said, and and I think that there's probably many things that contribute to why why vulva owners might not explore their own bodies. One being it's not preached in mainstream world, the shame, and then also it's like you're dealing with a different anatomy that is like there's less screaming at you to like rub one out.
I mean, you can't see it right in front of you, so you got to like go kind of hunt around. It's like hunt and peck on the keyboard. You got to go like hunt around, see what you can find.
Go and explore. And so, but you specifically do a lot of work around these thoughts and what people are having, within sex and outside of sex too, but specifically around anxiety often and self-doubt. What can people do? So what are these? We talked about what some of these thoughts might be, but maybe you have more to elaborate on that. And then what can people do in and out of the bedroom to dissolve that thought process?
Yeah, that's two great and big questions. I mean, I think we've talked about some of the thought patterns that lead up to it, but if we take like one of the things I really like to do in my work is take some of those insights of feminist theory, but work on making them actionable in some way, right? Rather than just acknowledging them. And so, right, one of the problems is that people who are socialized as women and raised as women are taught that their sexuality is, I think, responsive, right? That we are supposed to feel aroused because someone else desires us, right? And I think that is a really big problem because it makes the focus of your thinking about your sexuality somebody else's experience. And I think that comes up I see that come up a lot in the reverse of the stereotypical, which is that the penis haver is going to have the higher sex drive, which I just think is a myth, right? So I see this come up a lot with my clients thinking like, well, but like I can't feel aroused or desirable if someone else is not actively desiring me. Like that's where my relationship to my sexuality is. Then I think it comes up in the act of sex as well, with women, people who are socialized as women being much more preoccupied with like, well, what's their experience? Are they having a good time? Am I taking too long? Like, do they like what they're seeing? How do I smell? How do I taste? Like all of that, right?
Like them, like pointing the
yeah, exactly. And I think that all comes from that original like idea that you're women. Like, I don't think that people socialized as men are taught that. I think they're taught that their desire is this like organic thing inside them that they go out into the world with and like find recipients for, right? And like people socialized as women are really taught that like it is the being desired that creates their arousal, right? So I think that one of the ways we can work with that on a much more concrete level is noticing when our thinking is very focused on the other person's experience and practicing thoughts that counteract that. So, I'll have clients saying to me who've been, in a monogamous relationship for 10 years, like, well, I just don't, like, I'm worried that he doesn't like my body or that I don't look good naked, right? And I think we can actually practice thinking different thoughts. Like, for instance, he's been wanting to see me naked for 10 years. Probably he knows what I look like, right? Like, possibly he likes how I look, right? Or it's possible that I'm very big on, like, what I call ladder thoughts, which are baby step thoughts. So we're not going from like, my thighs are gross and I take too long to orgasm to like, I am a sex goddess who can, orgasm at will or whatever. Like, we're not going to immediately try to go too far. We're just going to practice baby step thoughts. And so I think like some of it is like bringing some logic into it. This person keeps wanting to have sex with you. Probably they find you attractive. That's like a pretty good inference we could make, right? And but practicing thinking that, right? Or thinking about when people are anxious that they're taking too long to orgasm, not only they're being very goal oriented about it, like the orgasm is the only point, right? And so we can think about changing our thoughts about that. What is the point of sex? Is it just to have an orgasm? Almost all of us can have an orgasm maybe not all, a lot of us can have an orgasm on our own faster than with anybody else, right? We know exactly what to do. We don't have to deal with them, right? So is that the point of sex? If that's not the only point of sex, then like, what else can we think about is the point of having sex in a way that you can enjoy the process without being so fixated on the goal? Because it's true in sex in any area of your life. If you get very fixated on a goal in a way that you're like anxious about not having it, it makes it impossible to get there. And then also thinking like if somebody is, a lot of women have this, I find particularly vulva havers, depending, have this about somebody going down on them. That's the place where they're like particularly obsessed with like how long it's taking and if it's happening fast enough. Because they think of it as like this, it's like someone's doing them a favor. It's like they're mowing the lawn or something, right? As opposed to like, this is like, it's possible, this is enjoyable for your partner, right? I had a client who I coached once where I was like, let's just pretend it's like a cookie that your partner likes. Like they're just eating the cookie. Like if you think about it as your partner's eating a delicious cookie that they enjoy, you're not like, oh my God, are we there yet? Is the cookie done? Are you done? Are you right? You're not as like uptight about it. So these are all sort of like one-off examples, but what we can do is really figure out, like most of us have no idea what we're thinking in general. So it really is a process of becoming aware of what we're thinking and then coming up with something that is a little bit better, not all the way to like, it doesn't matter how long and I feel amazing and we could do this, right? That's too far. It's not going from like, I have to have sex with the lights off and clothes on to let's open the windows and turn on all the lights. So it's like baby step thoughts that we can practice so that we get a little bit of a change in our experience and then we get a positive feedback loop going and then we can like upgrade the thought a little bit more, upgrade the thought a little bit more. And the last thing I would say, I feel like I've been talking for like 20 minutes straight, is like being willing for it to be a little uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable, I think, for people who are socialized as women to take some of these actions in the bedroom, to be like, we're going to do this as long as it takes for me to have an orgasm, or I'm going to say no when I want to say no, or I'm going to initiate, right? Even though, and not to get personally if my partner says no, like you have to be a little bit willing to be uncomfortable. It is, even for me, like I do this as my job. And when I have a new partner, it's like still there's a little awkward where I got to be like, well, here's the things that I like. And do you want to do this? And like, just be willing for that. Be willing, like have the capacity to tolerate it being a little awkward. So on the other side of that is amazing sex. But if you aren't willing, it's like we want to wait until we're perfectly comfortable and never feel insecure again to have those conversations or turn on the lights or whatever. And like that day is never coming.
Okay, time for a quick break. This podcast is made possible by OMGYes.com. OMGYes is a research-based online program that teaches you all about how to pleasure the pussy. OMGYes studied thousands of vulva owners to find out how they orgasm and then made tasteful and inspiring short videos to show you techniques on how to pleasure yourself or another vulva. I've been recommending OMGYes to my clients for years and it's changed their lives.
So for all you vulva owners or vulva lovers out there who may already be having good orgasms and you want to take it to the next level, or perhaps you want to explore more variety in your playtime, OMGYes will have something just for you. With 2 seasons, one all about internal and the other all about external techniques, it's better than any book or DVD money can buy. To learn more, visit omgyes.com/shameless. Our listeners get $5 off. Check it out.
This podcast was also made possible by Uberlube. It's a luxurious silicone lubricant great for all kinds of sex. It's less likely to throw off the pH than most other lubes, and there are hundreds of doctors who recommend Uberlube to their patients, whether they want to make their hot sex even hotter or for folks who are experiencing dryness. You never knew lube could be this good.
So whether you're an avid lube lover or you've never used lube before, Uberlube is right for you. It has no flavor, no scent, and feels absolutely amazing on the body. Uberlube has endless uses. I use it to tame my hair frizzies, to prevent chafing, and I even put some in my mouth right before an oral sex session, and it totally ups my blowjob game. Oh, and the bottle, it's gorgeous. It's totally discreet and looks more like a beautiful cosmetic product, so you can even leave it on your nightstand shamelessly.
To learn why we think it's the best lube on the planet, check out uberlube.com. Use code SHAMELESSSEX and you get 10% off and free shipping. That's uberlube.com. Go check it out. And now back to the show. So do you think that, because when you're speaking, one of my thoughts is that someone could get on board for, okay, I'm going to retrain my thought process and start standing up for what it is that I want and believe and do this self-exploration of my body. But I think it would also be important for your partner to be on board. I mean, that's a conversation I have with your partner. Here's the thought process that I have. Here's how I get in my own way. Here's what I really want and desire. I don't want orgasm to be the goal. Can we just make it about pleasure and connection? But what if the partner's like, that's weird, or that's not normal, or, I think people do run into that, is that one person's like, yeah, I want to make my own rules for sexuality. I'm questioning everything and I'm getting more clear on what I want. But there are other partners like, I'm not down for that. I like the traditional stuff because that's what I think is normal, or that's what works for me, or it scares me that you're thinking outside the box. What would be your advice to those people who feel kind of stuck?
I mean, I think you have to decide, like, number one, how important is this to you to change and explore it? Number two, like, it's okay for your partner. I mean, we can't, the way that I teach, like, we can't control other people's reactions, and they don't owe us to have the perfect reaction that we want them to have.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? So, like, maybe your partner is like, that's weird, and freaks out. And then you have the conversation again 2 weeks later, and now they're like, okay, it's a little weird, but I'm a little bit less freaked out. Right? Yeah. Like, I mean, if you're in a relationship where you are not able to talk about sex at all with your partner because of their reaction, and that's consistent over time, you have to decide how important is it to you. I don't think there's a should there either. I don't think, like, to be an empowered, like, sometimes people think I'm a feminist coach that I'm going to tell them, like, if you were really empowered, you would, like, break up with this person or have these priorities, or, like, no, everybody, has different priorities. If sex is not, if having a certain kind of sex is not a major priority for you and everything else in your relationship is worth it, then okay. I mean, let's just be realistic about the decisions we're making. But I think that, like, if it's something you want, I mean, this is what I teach. I teach this for any area of your life. Like, the universe and nobody else don't owe it to you to, like, make that happen in a way that is not uncomfortable for you at all. So if you want to explore sexually, then I think work on part of your thought work is about being brave enough to have that conversation, and then maybe have it again. Right. Or maybe find, like, okay, so, like, when we don't take it personally, that's when we can be curious and find out a lot more useful information, right? So someone's first response might just be like, weird. What are you talking about? We've always done it this way. I thought you were happy, right? If you take that personally and you, like, shut down and now the conversation's over and nothing positive happened, right? If you can do the work to not take that personally, that's when you can get curious the way that, like, I'm curious about somebody I'm coaching. Like, well, does it all sound weird to you? Is it just like, what about this thing, right? Or is that thing sound like, why is it weird? Or what, right? Working through that, I mean, you have to assume, just like, the person in this scenario who wants to initiate the conversation, you have to imagine if your partner came to you and was like, actually, I haven't been liking what we've been doing for 20 years, and now I want to talk about it. Like, you probably freak out too, and that's okay, right? Yeah. Like, people are allowed to have their reactions. But I think most people, if you are able to allow them to have whatever thoughts and feelings they're having, I think if there's a positive basis to the relationship, people end up wanting to communicate and being able to over time, if you keep at it. If that's not possible, then again, you have to decide, like, are you going to stay in this relationship, and why?
Or go see a coach or a therapist stat.
Totally. Well, everybody should do that. Yes. Everybody should have a life coach and learn how to manage their mind. Yeah. Here's what you do. You just play my podcast, like, out loud for a while until your partner eventually is like, change my thoughts?
What is all this unfuck your brain stuff? I didn't know I could unfuck my brain. Exactly. Do you think also that we're speaking more so to heterosexual relationships? Do you think, a vulva owning individual with another vulva owning individual, or, someone socialized to be as women, two people from that upbringing, that they're still running into similar things? Or do you think this is still similar?
I don't think it's about who has the vulva. I think it's about, I mean, as we have a lot more acceptance for non-binary or different or transsexualities, like, I think there are more and more people who transition earlier and earlier in life, and so that may start to be different. But I think, at least in the past, like, it mostly has to do, I think, with how you're socialized. So it's like people who are assigned female at birth and were treated as such, and people who were assigned female at birth and identify, like, it's really like what was happening in the 20 years or so that you were being socialized, and your sexual kind of your gender and sexual identity were being shaped by all those messages. I think that's really, it doesn't really matter what parts you have now or what parts you have. Like, it matters that I think is what's going on. So yeah, I think two people socialize as women, whatever genders they are now or identify as now or whatever, if they're in a relationship, they're going to have some of that same stuff. I do think it'll be different because I think a lot of the gender socialization for women is around, and sexuality is around interacting with a masculine or penis having sexuality or like a stereotypical male sexuality. So I think it'll be different, but to me, that's really it. And of course there's a whole, I mean, somebody could have this whole conversation about two people socialize as men in a relationship, right? I just think it's going to be a different thing. They're going to have, again, like patriarchy is bad for everybody. They're going to be having a different problem happening because they're both socialized that way. That's just not what I'm as much an expert in because I was not raised that way. I was not socialized as a man. So I just,
so a lot of these things that you're talking about, then a lot of the parts about retraining your mind and the anxiety that comes up around sexuality, it's different stories for how people are socialized, of course, but a lot of it is applicable to penis owning individuals too.
Totally.
Yeah.
First of all, I think learning how to figure out what's happening in your brain and how it's impacting your life is applicable to literally everyone, probably including like household dogs, like just not even just humans, like I mean, really just humans. But I think that's applicable to everybody. And I think everybody, no matter what their sexual identity is or what their gender identity is or what their expression is impacted by those messages. I tend to focus on what is the experience of people who are taught to think about their sexuality the way that society teaches people identified and treated as women to think about their sexuality. And sometimes that means there are people who identify as women now who were not socialized in that particular way, but they're experiencing it now. And then there's people who are socialized that way who don't identify that way or never did. Like it's it's not like a set of clear categories. It's really just, but I think like the thing that I focus the most on is what do we learn all around us all the time by osmosis about what sexuality is like, and particularly what your sexuality is like if you are what society terms like a woman with that whole stereotypical baggage.
Can you give our listeners just a couple tools to how they can, because I think for some people they get stuck, how do I even know what my thought process is? I imagine there's a slowing down, there's like a mindfulness process.
Write that shit down. That's how. You sit down and write it down. Do not try to do it in your head. Even I don't do it in my head. And especially if you're just starting out, you got to get it all on paper. I mean, this is why people find journaling effective. I'm not teaching journaling specifically, but like people have kept journals for millennia because writing your thoughts down on paper helps you process what's going on for you and start to like see themes and start to see what's happening. It's like unofficial thought work from a long time ago. So yes, sit down, set a timer if you want for 5 minutes, write down your thoughts. The only important thing to do is not to believe your brain when it says, I don't know what I'm thinking. Because sometimes brains are lazy because they evolved to save energy and be efficient. And they don't necessarily want to look at all their thoughts that are painful. So that are sometimes painful or anxiety producing or whatever else. So one of the things I work on a lot, especially with my high anxiety clients, is people with a lot of anxiety are generally are aware of their thoughts, but they're evaluating and judging them a lot. And then there's a lot of anxiety about that. So like the first number one skill is non-judgmental observation, right? Like learning how to, on paper, get your thoughts down and then be curious about them rather than observe them, make them mean something about you.
Or then become them and judging yourself. And I speak for myself when it comes to the ways that I get in my way in sexuality. I sometimes it is like a mindfulness process. Oh, I'm making noises. I don't know if you can hear that as a little feedback, but in whether it's my self-pleasuring practice, which is actually where I get, it's easier for me to pay attention to what's happening in my process in my brain and in my body than it is when I'm having sex with someone else. So for me, if I'm like, I don't really know what are the thoughts that I have, during self-pleasure that might be getting in my way. For me, it's with my own self-pleasure practice that I can really notice. Then after I would, write into my journal, like, here's this thing, X, Y, and Z, and maybe the same thing with a partner too, to really notice. And are you advising people to like share that with their partner? Like, so when we have sex, just so I might be like just watching myself in my brain a little bit.
You just write it down afterwards. That's the thing. It's like our brains always want to pretend they don't know, but you can totally remember. Like all you have to do is kind of go back to that space. So
just don't wait like a week to go back.
But I mean, people, you can, our brains just always say, I don't know. Like whenever my client says, I don't know, I just say, okay, if you had to guess, what were you thinking? And then it's always right there. It's just like there's an initial knee jerk, like, I don't know. So I'm not saying you do not need to stop sex and write down your thoughts right then, right?
Yeah,
You can just kind of, if you see one go by, you can notice it, but you can also just after sex sit down and be like, and not right after, like the next day is fine, but just sort of be like, okay, let me try to remember what happened last night and what was I experiencing? Why might that have been? Like just the very simple act of assuming that you will be able to access your thoughts and figure it out will make it possible to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had the thought of the Seinfeld episode with George Costanza with the pastrami sandwich, but instead it would be stopping sex to go write in a journal.
Exactly. You don't have to be like, hold on, keep it right there. I got to make some notes.
Okay. Now you can start again. I'm done.
Go again. Yeah. Now we got to back up. I lost it. Let's start from the beginning. Yeah,
let's keep on going. Yeah. And I would imagine too in your work, there's no necessarily, shame or trauma hierarchy, but when people are showing up with more, with a ton of trauma, and whether it's physical, sexual abuse or emotional abuse, or there's bigger, perhaps more work and bigger obstacles for folks. And so a lot of the work that you're doing with people is working with their minds, but also in turn works with their bodies. But what would be your advice for folks who are working past some sexual abuse, assault, whether emotional or physical?
I mean, I always think it's a good idea if you've had significant trauma or if you have complex trauma to work with a trauma therapist. Like I think, but there's a lot of, interesting work out there on post-traumatic growth versus post-traumatic stress disorder, which is how we all think of it as like trauma. And then there has to be this bad outcome and it's fucked you up. And I don't think that framework is that helpful. I don't think that there's a should, like whatever your experience is your experience. But I think that all of the same tools apply. And a lot of the work I actually find when I work with people who have strong trauma responses that there's so many thoughts they're having about that experience that they can use thought work to work on, right? Like part of the whole problem is that all the stories we have about not just the past trauma, but what it means about us now, like that it's a problem and that now we're not normal and now our partner is going to be upset because we had to stop because we had a flashback or like whatever's going on. And all the same work applies. Like if you, without that story, it's not the end of the world if a symptom comes up or you want to stop. It's like not a big deal. It's okay. It's safe to do that. It's all of like the story around they're going to judge me or like judging yourself or I'm not normal or I'm broken. I'm never gonna be able to have sex normally again. Or it's right. It's like there's so much judgment, self-judgment and shame that goes on there, even with people who don't want to believe they would think that, right? Or like feel very strongly that shouldn't be the case. The human mind is capable of having a lot of opinions about how people shouldn't be ashamed about things and then having a lot of thoughts that create shame about those things. We do both. We multitask. So, I mean, that's what I would say. Like, of course, there are therapies that are specifically geared towards trauma in the body, especially like EMDR therapy, rapid eye movement release therapy. But thought work will never hurt you in doing this work. And like anything else in your life, it is not even always the symptoms of the trauma now that are the biggest problem. It is all of our thoughts and stories about what that means about us. And because that's what we live with all the time. Like a symptom comes and goes, your story is going in your head 24/7.
Yeah, and anxiety seems to be much more about a lot of thoughts, too many thoughts about something that's terrible that's going to happen in the future, something that doesn't feel good, or something along those lines. And so, what came to mind as you were saying that for me also was faking orgasms, and that's something that comes up a lot for a lot of folks. I mean, I met penis owning individuals that have faked orgasms before as well.
Totally.
But the most of the people I know that have faked orgasms are own vulvas. And so it's not only, okay, so I have anxiety about something where I feel like I'm not performing or reacting or being the way I should be as a sexual being. And so I'm going to fake this orgasm. But then there's the negative thought about being a bad person for faking the orgasm. Yeah. So there's that like kind of double whammy of that way of something that feels kind of harsh in the system. A lot of our listeners, though, they're in long-term relationships, and a number of them have been faking orgasms throughout their long-term relationships. What is your advice to those folks? It's a scary conversation to be like, hey, partner, I've been faking
by the way
5 years,
But I also don't think, I mean, so one thing I'll just say is like, as a kind of mindset, thought work focused coach, I don't really tell people what to do. I just try to show them how they're thinking, because I believe that our feelings and our actions flow from our thoughts. And so I don't have any idea what someone should do, but what I can do is show them the way that their current thoughts are producing their current result. And then once what I find is once people truly see that their thoughts are optional and they could change them, it all flows naturally from there, which is why I think a lot of coaching doesn't work and gets a bad, or sometimes therapy also. Everybody, you can tell someone, go have this conversation with your partner and this is how you should approach it. But if their thoughts aren't in line with that and they are freaking out about it, they're not going to do it. Right. Yeah. Just like we can all look up on the internet, like all the healthy things in the world we can do, and then we don't do them because our thoughts are different. So I think I would say, like, number one, I don't necessarily think we have to have the thought that the only way forward is to confess to a lifetime of deception. Like, I don't think we necessarily have to do that, right? Like, let's just take it back a step, John. Like, I totally make sense, actually, that somebody who's been faking orgasms for 20 years would think that, because this person is already like an all or nothing thinker who's overly focused on how things appear. It's just like it's a common symptom of kind of black and white perfectionist thinking, or
like caretaking of someone else's emotions too. I can't.
Yeah, which comes from that perfectionism too. Yeah, or like I always need to be. So I like, what if we didn't say anything, but just one time we were like, oh, could you go a little slower? Like, what if we just like, yeah, you can have a big like reveal where you reveal you've been lying the whole time, but I don't think you have to do that. I think you could just start to dial back the faking, like dial up the real, and learn how to, like, people's bodies change, sexuality changes. Like, maybe now you just want to explore something else, or something else feels good or different. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, I mean, some people will want to do the thought work to be able to say like, hey, I've been faking it this whole time and I really want to have a more authentic relationship. And turns out we need to put on our squirrel costumes, or like whatever whatever it is that you haven't been getting. So I think it really depends a lot on the relationship. Obviously, if like you're faking them because you're really into something that you've never even told your partner, and that's going to be necessary for you to get off, then you're going to maybe have to have a more straightforward conversation about it.
Yeah.
But I think really what you have to do is work on the thoughts. Why are you faking orgasms for 20 years? I'm not saying that's bad, but you just want to understand what your thought process is. What are the thoughts? Like, I have no agenda about what my clients do or what their results are. It's just always, do you know what your reason is? And do you like that as a reason?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Helping them get clear on like where the story of where this originated from and why you're buying into it so heavily and how is it serving you. And
and like, if you take responsibility for your own emotions as caused by your thoughts, that really changes what you decide you will or won't or should or shouldn't do to try to manage everybody else's thoughts and feelings.
So much pressure to manage everyone else's thoughts and feelings.
And you know what? It's impossible. So it's a real amount of pressure for no good outcome.
Yeah. It's not going to work. You really can't do it. Everyone's
but we're like, maybe this 1,001th time. It's
maybe we'll finally prove it wrong. I can get this.
Exactly.
So your podcast then is Unfuck Your Brain with a little asterisk in there, because I don't think that you can actually say fuck on your title on iTunes. But you can say whatever you want in the actual podcast.
That's right.
Could you tell our listeners more about how they can find you, work with you? Obviously, you see clients, you have the podcast, you work with people online, is it in person, etc.?
Yeah. So you can find the podcast anywhere you find podcasts, or just unfuckyourbrain.com. And the way I work with people is through the Clutch, which is a feminist coaching community. I like to call it a feminist coaching wonderland, but people don't really know what that is. But it's an amazing community of women who mostly, although not all, identify as feminists, and people who are socialized as women or identify as women is who the group is for, and who are interested in digging deeper into all of this work. I mean, I think, we could have had 17 podcasts about this, because the influence of the mind on sexuality and sexual experience is so fascinating. Like, we could have a whole one about kink. There's like so many interesting facets of it. But it's really a place for people who are doing this work on any area of their life to learn how to actually, creating the life you want. I would say that the one thing most people don't understand, sexuality wise or otherwise, is how it's actually much easier than you think to change big things in your life that seem like they have been that way forever, like faking orgasms for 20 years, or like never having had an orgasm, or whatever it is. Like, it's, you can change your life dramatically it's not overnight, right? We have like unrealistic, we're like, either I want it to change all overnight or it never will. it does take tools and skills that I certainly felt like, oh, just no one ever taught me that this was the secret to life. Why didn't someone mention until I was 35 that I could decide what to think on purpose? That would have been a useful thing to know in my 20s. But once you learn that, it's kind of astounding how much you can change your own life. So to me, my work in the world is teaching women how to liberate themselves from the inside out, and that we can have all the conversations with our partners we want in the world. We can go do all the marches we want. We can do all the political action we want. I come from being a social justice lawyer. I'm not against political action, but if we don't change how we think and feel about ourselves from the inside, and if we don't undo the impacts of patriarchy on our brain, none of that outside shit is going to make a difference.
Yeah. Yes, it has to start within. And I remember reading something that there's like the whole thing about you have to learn to love yourself. And I read something about how you think it's really important for people to learn to like themselves. You use the word like.
Yeah, or accept. Let's just go with like, how about we learn to stop shaming ourselves all the time, just half the time. Then we'll go to a quarter of the time. Then we'll get to no shame. Then we'll get to like, then we'll get to love. Yeah. I'm very pragmatic. Like this is not like positive thinking, chanting affirmations. Mm-hmm. This is like, what is a thought I can believe, whether it's about my orgasm or my body image or my parenting or my job or whatever it is, that is believable to me and feels a little bit better than what I believe now. And you do that enough times, your whole life changes.
Mm-hmm. And it's that easy and also not.
It's both. It's simple but not easy is what I always say. It is like, it's not a magical talent that like I have that other people don't have. It literally is just a couple of tools and skills and information that for some reason we don't teach people when they're 6 years old like we should. Yeah. But once you have it, it's just being willing to keep practicing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all practice. And that's what we say on the podcast often is, good sex, great sex, connected sex is, it's a practice like a meditation, and meditation to a lot of people is really simple and also really hard. It's not something that overnight you just nail it. There's dedication and commitment and practice, and it's a forever practice, right? It's not just I practice today and I'm cured. So your website is Unfuck Your Brain, but it's UNFCK your
or either one. You can spell it all the way out.
Oh, we can put a U in there. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, you can just go no asterisk. You can't have an asterisk in a website. That's what I've learned. But you can go to just unfuck spelled out. Yeah, yourself.com. Unfuckyourbrain.com. Not yourself. I don't know who that is. Unfuckyourbrain.com.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so everyone go check out unfuckyourbrain.com. Go check out the podcast on all of the apps, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, all the things. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm say us, but April is not here. She's invisible. She is currently.
She's very quiet today.
That's unusual because April usually has a lot to say. We love you very much, April, and thank you, Cara, for joining. Everyone, go check out the podcast. And for our listeners, you hear us talk about how much we love Margins wine. I'm not drinking it right now because April's not here. She's my drinking buddy. But we love Margins wine. Go check out marginswine.com. It's a woman-owned operation, only does 2 releases a year, I think. So if you get our newsletter, you get first dibs on the info on the batches. And go sign up right away and you'll know what we are talking about. And I think that's it. What would April say? She's the one that usually closes. I'm the opener. She would say, we love our listeners and please go and review us on iTunes. We love you very much. And she would also say, ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.